What a difference 8 months can make. Back in May last year, it was a triumphant Arlene Foster who led her team back into government as the leader of the largest party at Stormont. Fast forward to tonight, and we're just 2 weeks away from another election. This time with the DUP at loggerheads with its former partners in government and rows over RHI, legacy and the Irish language, leaving little hope for a return to Stormont anytime soon. I asked Arlene Foster to explain how she might work with Michelle O'Neill after the vote.
Well, of course, it's not for Michelle O'Neill or indeed for Gerry Adams or anybody else in Sinn Féin to tell the people who should lead unionism and who.
That's not what she said. She didn't say who would lead unionism. She just said she wouldn't support you being in the executive office.
Well, the electorate will decide who they want in as their leader in terms of unionism, and it's up to the electorate. It's certainly not up to Michelle O'Neill or Gerry Adams
but she can block you
from Sinn Féin. Yes, but I mean, it depends what her mindset is. Certainly, I'm not in the realms of blocking anybody or breaking anybody for that point of view. I'm in the realms of trying to get devolution back up and working again, because of course this unnecessary election has been caused by Sinn Féin and we shouldn't be in this position.
Sinn Féin has consistently referred to what it says is corruption at the heart of government as a reason for the collapse of Stormont. Said that throughout this election campaign so far. How does the DUP respond to that?
Well, first of all, there's legal issues around that, so I'll not get into that. But in terms of their narrative that they've grown up since December, I think we have to look back then to what was happening in the 8 months before that. And as you well know, we were getting on with the business of government. We were dealing with the programme for government. We had a draft programme for government. We had health reforms underway in terms of Bengoa. It was an executive strategy.
With respect, that's not an answer to my question. I'm asking you about Sinn Féin consistently referring to what it says is corruption, an allegation of corruption at the heart of government. How do you respond to that?
Well, I responded by saying, let's look at actually what was happening last year. And what was happening last year is we were getting on with government. And it was really only when I was in China dealing with issues on behalf of the Executive Office, of course, and I went on that trip with the Deputy First Minister's agreement, because he had taken on well before the trip took place. So I went off to China, and when I came back, we had to deal with the whole RHI debacle, which had grown up at that time. And so it's quite wrong for Sinn Féin to try and rewrite what has been happening in government over this past 9 months, for them to try and characterise it. And of course it's a political characterisation and it's done for political effect. And that's what has been happening since then.
In last May's election campaign, the DUP made it all about you. Arlene's candidates, Arlene's vision. Let's talk about you and your competence 8 months on. Your opponents say you're not the safe pair of hands people thought you were. This is a very different Arlene Foster going before the electorate now compared to then.
No, it's not actually, and that's the irony of all of this. It's exactly the same Arlene Foster who stood on that platform in May of last year. And
in very different circumstances.
In different circumstances, I think that's right, but certainly not a different Arlene Foster. It's exactly the same Arlene Foster who's asking for people's support, who's asking for people to look at my record in government over 10 years and not to be listening to the political smears, the political allegations, rumours, and you know, just because you say something more than once doesn't make it true, Mark, and that's why I am pleased that the public inquiry has been set up, and instead of having the whole drip effect that we've been having over this past period of time, we'll actually get to the truth and actually get some justice.
I want to ask you about something which is relevant on the day that we're having this conversation, because one of the most glaring examples of the differences between yourselves and the DUP and Sinn Féin is, of course, your position on legacy cases. Tonight, the Sinn Féin leader at Stormont is attending a commemoration at Clonaux for 4 IRA men shot dead by the SAS. Can you see any way of bridging the gap between your parties when you two, as individuals, and your parties and your supporters are so divided on such an important and sensitive issue?
Well, I think we had made progress on the legacy issue, certainly in the Stormont House Agreement talks and in the Fresh Start talks. We had made progress as to how we were going to find the infrastructure to dealing with the past. But my position in dealing with the past is very clear. There can be no equivalence between terrorism and those people who stood between those of us in society who were living through it, i.e. the security forces who were protecting people, and terrorists who were going out in the dark at night to murder people.
What do you make of her attendance at that event tonight?
I mean, it is what it is, and I have to say, no surprise given her antecedents. So I'm not surprised, unfortunately, that she has decided to commemorate and indeed celebrate 4 IRA men who were on their way.
Well, commemorate. You've no idea if she's going to celebrate it. Commemorate it.
Well, I think having seen those commemorations in the past, I think we have a fair idea as to what's going to go on.
OK, let's talk about the RHI scandal, which is back at the top of the agenda after fresh revelations today. It was a botched scheme from the outset, and it happened on your watch. Well,
I'm very pleased that now we have the situation where there is a public inquiry set up so that we can get to the truth of everything that happened. I mean, I do absolutely acknowledge the frustration. I do acknowledge the anger that there is in the community about the RHI scheme. I acknowledge it because I share it. I mean, I was the minister at the time, so you can imagine how frustrated I am that this has now come to the fore.
Your critics, of course, say your ministerial oversight of the scheme was, frankly, incompetent. And when you were asked to account for your actions in, for example, stripping out cost controls and monitoring the scheme while you were the minister, you turned round and pointed the finger at your civil servants.
Well, all of that will come out in the public inquiry.
Well, that's what you did.
No, well, all of it will come out in the public inquiry.
We know it to be the case already.
Well, all of it will come out in the public inquiry, Mark, and I'm quite content. And I hope others are going to be we're going to accept the outcome of the public inquiry as well, because what we've had to date has been political smears, allegations, hysteria almost in relation to the issue, and I'm really pleased that that public inquiry is going to get to the truth of the matter now.
You wrote a platform piece in the Irish News last week, and in it you said, the perception has grown that I am hostile to the interests of nationalist and Republican people in Northern Ireland. I take my share of responsibility for some people having cause to believe that. So you do concede you have made mistakes on this issue. Well, what were those mistakes?
Well, I do concede that in the heightened tension that has happened since December, that there has been a lot of very harsh things said about me, and possibly I have to take my share of the blame in reacting to that as well. And what I hope will happen after the election and after the negotiations, and hopefully we will all be back in a devolved administration, that I hope it will be, and I'm genuine about this, Mark, I hope it will be a watershed moment, and we will look back and say, could we all have handled that differently? Because, of course, we've had difficulties in the past in devolution. We had, my goodness, the flags protest. We've had the murder of a man in East Belfast when the IRA were implicated. But we worked through all of that. We worked through all of that. And on this occasion, Sinn Féin decided they weren't working through all of that. They were going to pull the plug, put us into a very unnecessary election, and put devolution...
With respect, you've just turned that around and turned it into a way of criticising Sinn Féin. I'm asking you to analyse what you've said and to... having conceded that you have made mistakes, to tell me what you think those mistakes are. I mean, for example, do you now regret talking about feeding the Sinn Féin crocodile last week?
Well, again...
But that's not a laughing matter.
Well, it is a laughing matter.
Is it?
Well, it's Sinn Féin, for goodness sake. We're in an election, Mark. Can I tell you some of the things that have been said about me in this election?
Let's just concentrate on what you've said.
You just want to concentrate on me, that's fine.
Well, of course, because I'm interviewing you.
Yes, I know. And
last week I spoke to Michelle O'Neill.
I could talk about Michelle Gildernew wanting to put manners on me during this election.
And Michelle O'Neill sat in that seat last week and said that that was wrong, and said that she had admonished Michelle Gildernew for saying that. Do you welcome that?
And did she also admonish her party president, Gerry Adams, when he said he was going to break unionists and use equality to do that? Has she said that
when
she's
did
sorry?
He say that? How many years ago was that?
It's only 2 years ago, Mark.
2 years ago,
yeah,
right. Well, let's deal with the here and now. Let's deal with the present.
So you don't want to deal with the past,
welcome
you
the
want
fact
to deal
that
with the present?
Well, I think what we want to talk about are the current issues that are relevant to this election campaign. Just let me ask this question for, I think, the third time now. Do you regret the comments you made about feeding the Sinn Féin
No,
crocodile?
because it was in the context. It was in the context.
You just told me you think we need to look back at the end of this election campaign and consider the dialogue and the language that was used. I'm asking you if you think that was wrong, and you're telling me it wasn't wrong.
In actual fact, Sinn Féin have used...
You can't have it both ways.
In actual fact, Sinn Féin have used it now as a sort of a joke, and they're now talking about
and a lot of people have been very offended by it.
They're not offended by it. And Sinn Féin...
How would you know if they're offended by it or not?
Because they're now using it as T-shirts, Mark, with "See you later, alligator."
You've also said there will never be an Irish Language Act on your watch. Now, that's why your opponents have come to the conclusion, let me suggest, that you are hostile to people here celebrating their sense of Irishness.
No, not at all. And that's actually why I decided to do the article in the Irish News to debunk that thought. I mean, the reason I'm against an Irish Language Act, I think it is important to talk about this, is because of the cost of it, first of all, tens of millions of pounds. And
well, you have no idea what the cost of it is.
Well, we know...
Have you costed it?
We know, well, certainly Sinn Féin haven't costed it.
Well, Michelle O'Neill couldn't put a figure on it last week. That's absolutely right. Have you costed it?
We've looked to see how much the Irish language costs the Republic of Ireland government, and it's tens of millions of pounds every year.
Is it? How much is it?
Tens of millions of pounds
how many tens
every
of
year.
millions?
Well, I don't know.
Well,
tens of millions.
How many tens of millions?
Well, right, so it's OK if it's 20 million, but it's not OK if it's 30 or 40
I'm not saying
million.
it's OK if it's anything.
Correct.
How many tens of millions? Well, is it 20 million or is it 90 million?
It's 20 or 30 million every
20 or 30 million.
They spend on the Irish language.
Right.
So there's that, first of all. But that's only part of it. Secondly, we would be using the Irish language in an equal way to English. Thirdly, if you were applying to the civil service and had Irish language, you would have affirmative action to get into the civil service. But it depends
on what would be in the Irish Language Act.
And
this would be debated on the floor of the Assembly.
But this is the Irish Language Act that Sinn Féin want, and of course we're going into negotiations now, and that's what they're looking for. So I think it's important that the public know what they're looking for.
Right, but I want to go back to that issue of Irishness and whether or not you are hostile to the Irish language. You had a perfect opportunity to send out a very clear message on that front last summer. You were riding high after the May election result. Martin McGuinness suggested you both attend a Northern Ireland and a Republic of Ireland football game together at the Euro Championships. He went to both games. You refused to attend the Republic's match. Why?
Because it was the Republic of Ireland, and I'm a representative for Northern Ireland, and I was supporting the Northern Ireland team.
But you could have made a very significant gesture by supporting, going along to that Republic of Ireland match, couldn't you?
Is that what this is all about? Gesture politics? I mean, I'm supporting the Northern Ireland team. I am passionate about the Northern Ireland football team. I want them to succeed. And I think if you're seriously saying that the administration has collapsed because I didn't go to a Republic of Ireland football team.
I didn't say that for a second.
Well, I mean, that has been suggested.
Well, not by me.
It's facile in the extreme.
But here's the point. Martin McGuinness has made it clear he doesn't support the Northern Ireland football team. He's not a fan of the Northern Ireland football team. For reasons which he has rehearsed, he would be more of a supporter of the Republic of Ireland football team. But he saw the political capital to be made out of going to both games. Yes. You didn't reciprocate.
I don't do political capital, Mark. What I do is...
So was it gesture politics when he shook hands with the Queen?
Well, I don't know. That's a matter you have to ask him.
Is it of no value that he did that?
Well, that's a matter for him.
Well, I'm asking you what you think. You must have a view on whether Martin McGuinness, as an arch-Republican, was prepared to take tea, shake hands, sit down, have a conversation with the Queen on a number of occasions. You don't think that's politically significant?
Or indeed, if she actually chose to do that, I think it was hugely significant for Her Majesty.
So it was significant for her. It was a good gesture for her, but it was valueless as far as he's concerned.
No, it's not valueless. And now you're putting words into my mouth, Mark.
You said you're not into gesture politics.
I'm not into gesture politics. I'm into real politics. And I
so that was real politics?
For many, many years.
But you go into a Republic of Ireland football match wouldn't have been real politics?
No, how would it have been? Because I fundamentally believe in the Northern Ireland team and I want them to succeed.
You've confirmed today, I think, that your party received a large payment to advertise a pro-Brexit stance outside Northern Ireland, across Britain, during the referendum campaign. Where did that money come from?
Well, of course, as you know, we played a key role in relation to the Brexit campaign. We registered as a party in the Leave campaign because we felt very passionately about it. As a result of that, we played our role nationally and we received a donation.
How much was the donation?
Which has been properly put into the Electoral Commission,
Yeah.
and they're
How much was
satisfied
it?
with that. No, well, look, Mark, you see, there is, as you know, rules around this.
No, I'm asking you how much it was. How much was it?
We have stuck with it. Well, I don't have the figure here, so I don't know how much it was.
Well, you must have some idea how much it was.
No, I don't.
Well, there's been a lot of speculation. It could have been in the region of £250,000.
Well, I'm not here to speculate. I don't have the figures in front of me.
It's hard
so
to
I'm
believe
not
that
going
as
to
a leader of the
speculate.
DUP, you would have received a large amount of money as part of that Brexit campaign. You've no idea. No idea.
I'm not saying I've no idea. I'm saying it was
well, if you have an idea, well, how much was it then?
I am saying to you, Mark, it was properly accounted for in the
I'm not doubting that for a second. How much did you spend then? As you played a key part.
I have no idea how much was spent.
You've no idea how much you spent?
This was last June, Mark, and you're asking me to go back over Electoral Commission returns from last June. I'm in the middle of an election now.
You've absolutely no idea how much you spent.
Okay,
well, you must know where the money came from then. Who gave you the money?
Yes, I do, and that has been communicated to the Electoral Commission.
And why is it still a secret? Why don't people living in Northern Ireland...
It's not a secret.
Well, it is. Who is it then?
It's not a secret. We have done what we should have done in terms of the rules. As you know, Mark, there are rules particular to Northern Ireland, and if we're going to talk about the rules in Northern Ireland, we want to see all the donations open and accounted for, and that includes all of the money that comes from America.
So you're not prepared to say where that money... You would put how much it was, and you won't say where it came from?
No, because under the rules, as they currently stand, we have accounted for that in the proper fashion, and it'll be very interesting to see...
It would be made public across the border, but it isn't going to be made public here in Northern Ireland.
It will be accounted for under the rules as they currently stand.
Yes, but it won't be made public. We as taxpayers in Northern Ireland won't know where that money came from.
And we have indicated to the Secretary of State that we want to see those rules changed so that we're exactly
what
the
does
same
that say
as
about
the rest
openness
of the
and
United
transparency?
Kingdom. Well, what I've just said, we want to be open and transparent, but we received that money.
I mean, you could be.
We
What would be the reason for keeping that secret?
We received that money under the rules as they are currently constituted.
Yeah, you have conceded you certainly don't expect to return to a reduced 90-seat assembly with the 38 MLAs you had last time, although you are running 38 candidates. How many do you think you will secure?
Well, we're fighting this election to win. I do recall sitting here with you last year and you telling me we wouldn't go back with 38, and we did go back with 38.
No, I think I asked you if you would go back with 38. I watched the interview the other day. I did not say that you would not go back with 38.
Well, whatever about all of that, what is important...
You, interestingly, wouldn't say you'd go back with 38 either.
That we will win. What we want to do is win this election.
And in the light of Mike Nesbitt's comments on transfers, what's your advice to DUP voters across the country about how they should transfer their vote on after supporting the DUP? Should their second preferences be for the Ulster Unionist Party?
Well, their second preferences should be for Unionists, absolutely. That is very clear, because this election will be very close, and I want to maximise the number of Unionists that are returned to Stormont. And why do I say that? I say that for this reason. Because if there are a majority of nationalists returned to Stormont, we could find ourselves in the situation where nationalists use that to push for a border poll. And that would cause great instability. It would cause divisiveness like we have never seen before in terms of Brexit, which was supposed to be the most divisive thing that had happened to us. And so that's why I think it is absolutely wrong for Mike Nesbitt to advocate transferring to nationalism, because it may lead us into a very difficult position.
Let's get some thoughts from our commentary team of Professor Deirdre Heenan and Newton Emerson. Evening to you both. Let's talk about that Arlene Foster interview at the top of the programme. Newton, what did you make of what she had to say?
Well, of all the terrible aspects of that interview, the one that jumped out at me was not knowing the figure for the cost of Irish language legislation in the South. This is a totemic issue in this election. Foster's argument entirely boils down to cost, and yet she couldn't remember, although her party had found out, she couldn't remember the one number that boils down to. And
she said tens of millions, and then she clarified 20 to 30 million.
She should know an exact figure. She only has one figure to remember on this huge issue at the centre of the election. Now, she could then launch into a barrage of narky details at you, but she couldn't remember any factual details. And that's her leadership. She's got no grasp of detail. She can't offer a generous vision. So what is she bringing to this role, apart from a disaster she can't get out of?
OK, well, obviously, she and her supporters would take a very different view. Deirdre, what's your view?
Oh, I thought it was a shocker. She did herself no favours, and the one thing that jumped out at me was inconsistencies. So on the one hand, she said very dismissively, I don't do gesture politics, but of course I would have gone to the GAA. Well, as far as I know, she doesn't support a GAA team. I welcomed a public inquiry. No, you did not. I made mistakes. Well, what mistakes did you make? It's all Sinn Féin's fault. And went on to give a list of what Sinn Féin had the mistakes that they made,
Well,
according to
specifically,
her.
I mean, on that point, interesting, no apology for her comments about feeding the Sinn Féin crocodile.
Well, actually, her response to that was bizarre. Oh, well, it's Sinn Féin. I mean, what does that mean? These were her partners in government.
I think she means in the rough and tumble of an election campaign, that's acceptable.
Well, I don't think it is acceptable, and most people felt that it was offensive. And is she really saying that she couldn't realise that people felt that that type of language, feeding a crocodile, is offensive? I mean, yes, as Newton said, she's not across the detail, but really the inconsistency, saying one thing and then later on saying something, she seemed very unsure of herself as well.
We keep coming back to her manner, and I thought that there were signs there that she had decided to try and bring across a different attitude, but she couldn't hold it together. And obviously, while it's too much to expect someone to change their personality in the course of an election campaign, if you remember when Peter Robinson suffered a comparable disaster in 2010 to his career, he did appear afterwards to be genuinely humbled, at least for a while. But there's no sign of that from Foster.
But it's also that she seems to be struggling to find the right tone. So in some cases...
Yeah, she swings around from one to the other.
She oscillates all over the place. So in some cases she's quite dismissive. In another she's trying to be jokey and chummy. And it comes across as someone who is not quite sure where she should be as a leader.
She remembers, oh, I must be respectful in this next remark, and then forgets halfway through.
What did you make, Newton, of her defence of that decision not to go to the Republic of Ireland match in France last summer?
It was ridiculous and so easy. It would have been so easy to find words around that. Even if she didn't feel that she was able to go, she could have paid tribute to Martin McGuinness for finding the spirit to do so. When you mentioned the GAA team tour, she could at least have named her local one. But the whole manner of her approach to that was dismissive and contemptuous. And I'm sure that the Northern Ireland team itself won't be thankful for that support.
No.
What about, I guess we can't be sure about that. Maybe we'll hear from individuals who have a view and have some political capital as far as that's concerned. I just want to ask you about the breaking story today about political donations and the fact that we now know, she confirmed, that a substantial donation was made by an organisation in England to support the DUP's Brexit campaign. But we don't know what that organisation was, and we don't know how much the amount paid was.
Well, again, and the attitude was, you expect me to know figures. As has already been said, there are a number of key figures that of course you know, and instead of trying to refer back to something that happened years ago, those figures should be out there in the public domain. Of course,
they don't have to be. I mean, she's absolutely right when she says that the rules are that doesn't have to be.
But
you can declare them.
You can, of course, which was the point that I made. But equally, you don't have to.
But it comes across then as very shifty, and you're really saying, I know this, but of course I'm not telling you because I don't want to tell you. Why should I tell you? But as a leader, she should be saying...
fair to Arlene Foster, the point is she doesn't have to make that public. No. She's reported it to the Electoral Commission, and that is all that is required.
That organisation in England could have made that donation to a party there and had to declare it openly. The fact that they went through here looks suspicious. She needs to give a better explanation.
But it's also, you could also say she doesn't have to be generous. She doesn't have to come across saying, you know, we want to work together. She has clearly decided that she's working towards the hard line.